Man, we are, so we're in a new series called Becoming. And um, I don't think I've ever taught it quite like this before, these truths, but these are serious truths. These are the truths that the Lord has been downloading in my life for probably the past 2 years. And I've just been working it and studying it and looking at it. And so it all revolves around a journey that God wants to take all of us on. And so if I could reduce the scriptures down to five kind of points, this is what it would be. And so I want to make it as simple as I can and as powerful as the Lord will allow it. But listen, every life, don't miss this. Every life is a story, right? You sit around and you get quiet and you start asking people to tell you their story and you listen and you'll be fascinated at what you hear. I had a new friend of mine send me her son bar mitzvah. He you have to tell a story, and so he was telling a story about his grandparents who were our great grandparents for him, who were Holocaust survivors. And I read that this morning, and just to see God's handiwork in sparing his grandmother and our grandfather's lives to get them to where they met, totally amazing. Every life is a story, and it's worth listening to. We should tell each other our story of what God's done, right? It's important. Just like Charles was telling us about all the things that took place, right, in your life that brought you really just in the week, right? We need to hear those stories, don't we? It's important that we do. And so every life's a story. Every story's a journey, right? Every story, we're all going somewhere, right? It's a journey, and every journey has a destination. This is where it gets a little crazy because there are two destinations. Jesus tells me there's a broad road and there's a narrow road. So hear this. Every life's a story. Every story's a journey, but everyone doesn't end up at the same destination. God's been burdening me to be a disruptor. That's the word that he's given to me, and that's the word I'm going to be. It's a disruptor. You need to hear this because this is what we have to be. We don't go silently in the night. We're not the ones who just go, well, I'll pray for them. We're the ones that are going to lay in the road. We're the ones that are going to get the bullhorn out and scream that hey, don't go that way, right? It's our job to be a disruptor to those whose destination is that broad road. To do so, here's what has to happen. You and I have to get comfortable talking about the uncomfortable. We just have to. Not because we're mean-spirited people. We just have to be comfortable talking openly, truthfully, and lovingly about what God says in his word about life and about death, right? This is us. I want you to hear this now. This isn't me. This is us. We're in this together. So what I'm going to walk us through the next 5 weeks is what that journey looks like. It starts with the fact that we exist. I call that we be, right? Terrible grammar, but it matches the things that I believe God's wanting to teach us, right? So we exist. We are created in his image and likeness. We're tarnished, fallen, and he wants us to belong to him. And so we're going to look at that next week virtually, but we're going to look at what it means to belong. How do we belong? Listen, we're all his creation, but we're not all his children. Only those of us who are believers in Christ are that. Well, but he invites everybody to belong. He invites the whole world to be adopted by him. He's willing to adopt the whole world. But you have to know what that is to belong. And then once we belong, we're not on easy street. We're not just trying now to behave. He wants us to become something. And we're going to look at that journey of what it looks like to become. And when we are on that journey of becoming, then we begin to behold him, right? We begin to be like him. That's the goal, right? What does it look like to be like Jesus? This is what John tells us to do. Anyone who claims to be in him must live as he did, right? So we want to see what that looks like to behold him to the world, right? So that where we walk with this light of God in us, right? That shines bright. 3 things were lost at the fall, and we're going to look at that after we do this 5 series. Light was lost. Truth. Everybody you see now that's not a believer in Christ is walking in darkness. Man, I saw a bunch of them this weekend. You see them everywhere. There's walking in darkness. They're dead people walking. So we lost life, right? When Adam and Eve sinned in that garden, that their relationship with God was severed because of that sin. And so then their minds began to be darkened. This is how Paul describes it. Satan then slips in as a liar and a deceiver and from the realm of darkness, and he puts this fog over them so that things don't make sense. This is the world that we live in because of the fall. But in that world of darkness, there are individuals who God has made himself bright in their life. And we walk as grace agents, as light. Let your light shine before men, right? And you know how simple it can be? Stop whining and stop complaining. You want to change the world? Just stop that activity. That's what Paul told the Philippians. Do all things without grumbling or complaining, that you may shine as lights among a wicked and perverse generation. So we're not talking about something hard. We're not talking about having to memorize all the Bible. We just got to quit whining and complaining, right? That's a piece of it. And then what we lost love. We became selfish slobs. And so the world is void of light, they're void of life, and they're void of real love. Guess what God did when we get to that part where we belong to him? He gives us those things. And as we become that, more light is given to us and understood and shines. And we become like a mirror so that we reflect that. We have life and we have it abundantly. And so we live a life that's free. And then we're love machines. We have one thing, the Spirit. Listen, this is the Trinity too, and I'll talk about it later. But it is Christ is the light of the world, right? He is the Word made flesh. The Spirit of Christ is the one who gives life. And God the Father is the one, Theos didactos, he told the Thessalonians, teaches you how to love. He doesn't trust you and me to teach each other how to love. He said that you've been taught by God how to love, right? So he's the one. Because he first loved us, we then know how to love others. And so I'm not to my message yet. I'm just letting you know where we're going. And then as we behold him like that, we become this building, right? Living stones, gathering together to house the fullness of the living God. This is what the body. This is why we gather, so that we do that. We become this force for the world to stand up and take notice because it's undeniable what we look like. We're not like we once were. The American church has really wreaked havoc on us, and we've fallen into a lot of really disarray. But if you read about first century Christians and you listen to the pagans talk about them, they go, that's a crazy, strange lot. I could quote you several stories, eyewitness accounts of what they said. We don't understand these people. Because when one of them among them is starving, the others will not eat and fast and save food so that they may give to the one who doesn't have. And such is their course of life, that they're sacrificial and they're loving. It made no sense to them, but the world had to stand up and take notice. The world had to stand up and take notice that the disciples, though untrained and unlearned men, were speaking words of life and words of power, right? It makes sense when you do that. This is the journey that we're on in this series. So the ultimate journey consists of these 5 checkpoints, and this is what we're looking at. Today we start with the first one, a clear understanding of the fact that we exist. We be. Terrible grammar, great theology. Listen, don't take for granted your existence. We don't think this deep a lot, so just hang with me. Just imagine for a minute that there is this one lone sea turtle. Just go with me. One lone sea turtle in all of the seas and oceans and rivers of the world. Okay? And there's one donut-sized, shaped life preserver in that ocean. You got the picture? One sea turtle, all the vast waters of all of our earth, and one little life preserver. And that sea turtle swimming around and decides to come up for air, and his head comes through that ring, and he looks around. You know what the odds of that is? 1 in 400 quadrillion. I don't know how big that is. I'm guessing it's pretty big. The odds are pretty strong, right? That's the odds that you would be born. So track with me. Just think, I'm a little biology here, just hang with me. Your mom produced about 1 million eggs in her lifetime. Your dad produced about 5 billion sperm. Are we okay with this conversation? Now, think about it. If your grandparents didn't marry the one they did, you're not here. If your great grandparents didn't marry who they did, you're not here. Track with me. This is all biology. So you come down to your mom and dad. They're not here. One of them is not the same one. You're not here. Somebody else may be, but not you. And then your mom and dad decide not to, on this day, but on that day, you're not you. It was a unique issue when you came to be. You are, the odds of you being here are so crazy. So I'm glad you made it. Listen, if no one's told you, welcome to Earth, right? I'm glad you're here, right? I mean, woo, we made it, right? How many didn't? Think about that. You and me, God created us. And hear this. Acts chapter 17:26. I know you hear, man, this guy rants about the same thing all the time because it's the only message I got. God appointed the exact times and places in which we should live and the boundaries in which we find ourselves. Man, I met some people from all over the world 2 days ago. And it's amazing. These humans are amazing people with great stories and lots of laughter. And the whole world wants us to believe that we hate each other. Man, you squeeze into a table in this tent that's filled with about 2,500 or 5,000 people, and everybody's just squeezed in having conversation. And I'm trying to communicate with this older German gentleman that's sitting here, and we're talking, and he sort of asked me where I'm from, and I say Alabama, and he sings Sweet Home Alabama, right? I mean, you just realize, okay, I'm halfway across the world, yet he knew who I was. And then we met this delightful couple from California, and we began to just meet people from everywhere. I tell you that because the fact that we're here is not by accident. Hear this. You were created in the mind of God before your mom and dad ever existed. Before he put anything, he caused any matter to gather together that he created and then spun into stuff that he spoke into existence. He had already decided your birthday. Just come on. You have to hear this. I want you to understand something. You and me are miracles. Everybody. The one that we don't love, the one that seems evil on this place, still bears the image and likeness of God. That's why he condemned murder. That's why he said, man sheds blood, his own blood shall be shed. You know why? Because man is made in his image. This is what he talks about. Now, evolution, man, it's safe to say that the whole world believes that today. The whole world. It says you're a product of evolution. Can I just give you a real quick history of this? I don't want to take it long. I just want to understand this. A French naturalist, Buffon, or I like to say buffoon, wrote Histoire naturelle, which is the natural history. He said that environments had variations, and these variations compacted is what created this existence. That was in 1700s. This is a rarely new thing, this whole evolution thing. 1700s is when it started. Thomas Malthus, an English economist, wrote the essay of the principle of population, that growth and competition heavily influenced who made it and who didn't. That's kind of that whole aspect of the survival of the fittest. And that's a piece of it. And that was 1766. Then Erasmus Darwin, Charles Darwin's grandfather, got a hold of some of that stuff, wrote a book called Zunamia, and he talks about transmutation, and that's how we got from here to there. These are all people that don't want to believe in God, so you have to invent a new way for things to happen. Understand this? Now, listen, some of you may even believe in this stuff. Charles Darwin, around 1859, wrote his book, The Origin of Species. He partnered with a man named Alfred Wallace, who was from England, and they had conspired to write this thing. And so they wrote The Origin of Species. And that was Satan's entrance into devaluing all of human life. Now, he's had tricks down the ages. So we've had hierarchies, right? So we had slavery. We had all these things, right? Men always putting others in bondage, and this stress for power and all of those things. So Satan has always had his way of doing it, but evolution is one of his greatest ploys. So fast forward to 1925 in Dayton, Tennessee. There's a teacher there named John Scopes who's teaching evolution, and so he's tried. And he wanted the freedom to teach evolution, and he lost. But it set the wheels in motion. So that in 1968, the Supreme Court told Arkansas that their law against teaching evolution was unconstitutional. And if you were born when I was born in 1968, we began to teach openly this thing called evolution. So back to us. It's safe to say that if you were in school, you were probably taught that. Now, some of you who might be older than me, maybe not, but you were taught that. You go to the national parks, man, go and you read, and they're going to tell you about billions of years ago this happened, and millions of years ago that happened. I'm going to tell you they're wrong. You and me didn't evolve. We're not a part of the animal society. We're completely different. So just in case you didn't know, you didn't evolve from some higher form of species into what you are today. You're not an animal, even though some of us may act like it. You came to be because the creator of the universe made you in his image and likeness. It's called the Imago Dei. We'll go back to the beginning of the Bible. Let's start there. Can we do that in Genesis chapter 1? Can I just read this for you? I know you know it. Can we just hear it fresh? In the beginning. What a great way to start, right? In the beginning. Now, this is Moses writing. What God had told him was transpiring in the beginning of time before people were recording these things. In the beginning, God created the heavens and the earth. Now the earth was formless and empty, and darkness was over the surface of the earth, and the Spirit of God was hovering over the waters. Get this picture? And God said, "Let there be light," and there was light. And God saw that the light was good, and he separated the light from the darkness. God called the light day, and the darkness he called night. And there was evening, and there was morning the first day. And God said, "Let there be a vault between the waters to separate the water from water." So God made the vault and separated the water under the vault from water above it. And it was so. God called the vault sky, and there was evening, and there was morning the second day. And God said, "Let the water under the sky be gathered together in one place, and let dry ground appear." And it was so. God called the dry ground land, and the gathered waters he called the seas, and God saw that it was good. Then God said, "Let the land produce vegetation, seed-bearing plants and trees on the land that bear fruit with seed in it according to their various kinds." And it was so. The land produced vegetation, plants being seed according to their kinds, and trees bearing fruit with seed in it according to their kind. And God saw that it was good, and there was evening, and there was morning the third day. And God said, "Let there be lights in the vault of the sky to separate the day from the night, and to let them serve as signs to mark sacred times and days and years." He's even creating a calendar here that we would study by the stars in heaven. "And let them serve as signs to mark sacred lights in the vault of the sky to give light on the earth." And it was so. God made two great lights, the great light to govern the day and the lesser light to govern the night. He also made the stars. God set them in the vault of the sky to give light on the earth, to govern the day and the night, and to separate light from darkness. And God saw that it was good, and there was evening, and there was morning, and it was the fourth day. And God said, "Let the water teem with living creatures, and let birds fly above the earth across the vault of the sky." Can you just imagine this happening as he speaks, right? He speaks, and it's so. So God created the great creatures of the sea and everything living in them. When the waters teem, and they move about in it according to their kinds, and every winged bird according to its kind. And God saw that it was good, and God blessed them. And said, "Be fruitful and increase in number, and fill the water and the seas, and the birds increase the earth." And there was evening, and there was morning the fifth day. And God said, "Let the land produce living creatures according to their kind, the livestock, the creatures that move along the ground, and the wild animals, each according to its kind." And it was so. God made the animals which according to their kinds, the livestock according to their kinds, and all the creatures that move along the ground according to their kinds. And the Lord God said it was good. Then God said, first time we see something different. Then God said, "Let us make man in our image." Right away, you see something different's happening, right? We didn't just, and he didn't say at some point we're going to evolve. He says, and God said, "Let us make man." Who's he talking about? Who's he talking to? Some say he's talking to the angels. That makes no sense, because they're not made in his image and likeness. They're similar, but only man is made in the image and likeness of God. So we can't be talking about let's make man in the image and likeness of angels. That's a silly thing, but that's what some people would say. But he's speaking about the fellowship that he has among the Trinity, right? God the Father, God the Son, God the Spirit. That's why John tells us that, hey, we want you to have the Spirit of Christ so that your fellowship may be our fellowship as we have fellowship with God. It's the Spirit that does this to us. And so this is what he says. Now listen to it. Let us make man in our image and in our likeness so that he may rule over the fish in the sea and the birds in the sky and the livestock and all the wild animals. I didn't evolve from that. I was created to rule over that. So God created mankind in his own image. In the image of God, he created them. Male and female, he created them. And God blessed them and said to them, be fruitful and increase in number, fill the earth and subdue it. Rule over the fish in the sea and the birds in the sky, and over every living creature that moves in the ground. Then God said, I give you every seed-bearing plant on the face of the earth, and all the fruit within the seeds, that it will be yours to eat. And all the beasts of the earth, and all the birds in the sky, and all the creatures that move along the ground, everything that has breath of life in it, I give every green plant for food. And it was so. And God saw all that he made, and it was very good. He didn't say very good until you and I were a part of this place. I want you to understand that. We are made in his image. The word image, zelem, it means to carve, right? Literally fashion. And that's what he did. He fashioned us, right? Just like you would carve an idol. That's what he said, don't carve something made by man, made by hands. Why? Because he's already done that. We are his image, not some little wooden structure. That's why God hates all those idols, because they've tried to make it that. You and me, according to the scriptures, are the glory of God. This is who we are. If you don't know this, this is true of everybody that walks the planet. Everybody. I want you to see people differently than you somehow see people. Our biology is similar to creation, but our physiology is unique to the Creator, right? That means that we have self-consciousness. We can reason. Animals react. They're instinctive. You and me, we reason. We logically, our brain is wired differently than that of the animal kingdom. We have emotion. We can do these things. We have morality. We know a right from a wrong. We have relationship. That is, we have families. Most animals don't live in family units. There are some. So I'm not diminishing that at all. His creation is amazing. All of the animals are. But they're not like us. He created us to be in his image. That's why he uses to be a part of his family. That's why he uses terms like the household of God, right? That's why he uses a term like bride of Christ. It's a relationship he's always wanted. When it comes to the end of days, and he separates everybody. He says, these go over here and these go over here. And he begins to talk about when I was naked, you clothed me. When I was sick, you visited me and healed me, right? And when they say, when did we do that? And he said, who have you done to the least of these, you've done it to me. And then he looks at the ones who didn't, and he said this, depart from me, I never knew you. Right? What does that mean? Relationship. God's calling all of his mankind into a relationship with him. So we're created in his image. We have personality and relationship. That's verse 26. We're to be rulers over the creation. It's ours to steward this. This is what he's called us to do. To multiply the human race. And he wanted to populate the planet with people. And then to cause us to steward everything. Now, Genesis 2 tells us another story. We're not going to go there because I don't want to be here all day with you. But Genesis 2, he gave us the big picture in chapter 1. In chapter 2, he begins to bring us down. He talks about how man was made. And man was given authority. And he named all of the animals. And he walked through them. And Adam saw all of those. And he's realizing, man, it looks like they all got partners. Why am I the only one by myself? And after he had named all the animals, God looks at him and says, man, it's not good for you to be alone, is it, brother? It's nice. I'm going to make a woman for you. And so he puts Adam to sleep. And he takes from the rib and he fashions a woman. And she is his help meet. So now they're a team. He is a leader. He is sovereign. He is the glory of God. The woman has this role of submission, and in that deal of a weaker. I know nobody likes to hear all this. I'm just telling you what the scriptures teach, right? This is that lovingly, honestly, will speak the truth. We're meant to be in partnership, and so there is a patriarchal society that God sets up. And so man had his realm, and women come along, and there's this incredible support. Not like this, although there is that we're equal, but they're different roles. Man has one role, and a woman has another role. That's why you can listen to a woman, and she's going to talk a lot more nurturing than a man will, right? Because that's her role. And so men have theirs and women have theirs, and together we rule the earth. And this is what he's called us to. And we become husband and wife. We become one flesh. This is what God speaks about. And so this one fleshness then has children. And so we train them up in the same way that we've been trained up, right? And this is what God's called us all to. Then we saw the fall, Genesis chapter 3, and that's when everything went crazy. So that we come to Ecclesiastes, and Solomon says it like this. Let me get to it so I'll make sure I read it to you right. Ecclesiastes chapter 3. He made everything beautiful in his time. He also set eternity in the human heart. Yet no one can fathom what God has done from beginning to end. Listen to what he's saying. There's a darkness on mankind. God's put eternity in their hearts. Listen, that's why men are always man, go study the ancients. Go study Egypt and see why they tried to do everything they could to stay alive, and why they even mummified themselves and buried the living spouses with the dead man and all of those things, because they expected some sort of afterlife. Everybody thinks we're going to live forever. That's why the Hindus speak of this reincarnation, until you get to where you ought to go. All of them believe something like that. God said, I'm not putting, that's why. Why does the whole world search for those things? Because he's put eternity in our heart. But it's so darkened we can't fathom it. We don't understand it. And then Satan sought to undermine that whole thing by perversion. Right? If I can get him to sin, if I can get him not to trust God. What happened when that happened? All of a sudden, man and wife were kind of on polar opposites, weren't they? God comes along in the garden, and he asks Adam, where are you? He said, I was naked and I hid myself. Who told you you were naked? Now he's trapped. Now his wife, that's not known for that long, he's decided I'm going to throw her under the bus. Right? Oh, it was the woman. She did it to me. And then he looks at her and says, what is this you've done? And she's going, it was the snake, he did it. Right? And there was this war. So what happens when sin came is that we hide our flaws, and we begin to hurl accusation at each other. So we're not in unison like we ought to be. We're kind of at this divide. Satan did that. It's no wonder then, when you think about all of that the assault coming from the evil one will lead us into things like abortion. Why? Because God said populate the earth, and Satan's going, not a chance. I'm going to get him to kill it. Why do you think they passed their Moloch and all those gods? They sacrificed their children. Satan wants to disrupt this whole thing. And so he's after all of that. It's just no mystery then. These things aren't political issues. These are satanic issues that's coming at us. That's why abortion is. That's why evolution is that way, so you don't see who you really are. You see yourself as just some higher form. Listen, I know most of you don't believe in that, but I'm telling you, the worldview, don't expect it. You put your kid in government schools, and they're there for 8 hours a day, and they're learning all of that, and they've got little tools in their hand where they can see social media, and everybody's spilling whatever lie they want to hear. And we think if we can get them in church for 1 hour, we're going to undo a worldview that Satan has been determined to consistently beat against the whole days of their life. You want to know why our kids are in trouble? That's why. And so we have to be careful how we do things. We have to teach our kids what these things are. Why do you think homosexuality is there? You know why? It's just a biological fact. 2 women can't make babies. 2 men can't make babies. Right? So what does he do? Hey, let's disrupt. Can you see this? This is not a mystery. This is what Satan is doing. Gender confusion? Hey, let's take away your identity. You're whoever you want to be. I was talking with someone on a plane this week. She said in their school they're talking about putting litter boxes in there. No. Why would she lie to me? Litter boxes. So now it's no longer which bathroom do I use, it's which litter box do I use. Who does that? Satan does that. Where does racism and division come from? Satan. Chaos, war, kill each other off. It's all him. Here's the deal. We are a shell of what God has called us to be. He said eternity in our hearts we can't fathom. We exist. We exist in His image and likeness, right? We have strength. We have power. We have authority. We've abused it, right? What's going on in Washington right now? They're control freaks, aren't they? They took what God meant to give authority and they've turned it into some selfish act of just trying to take from everybody. But it happens not just in government, it happens everywhere, doesn't it? Everywhere. We just infight constantly. Okay, I want you to see this picture because it's important that we do it. You, me, and the world were made for so much more. God's desire is that you and I belong. That's why He said Christ. There's no other way. Well, all we know how to do at this point in this darkness is kind of destroy each other. And none of us are without sin. Listen, drowning people can't help drowning people. And so something outside of us has to act on us. And that's what we're going to talk about next week, what it means to belong. I met some incredible people on my trip this week. And Scott, my tour guide, kind of an earthy guy, Pennsylvania guy that moved over there to live with his girlfriend for 11 years. And so they've been living together. And she's German, and he likes the social benefits that they have, medicine and all of that. And so he's there. And I actually sat and Jared and I had lunch with him. Fascinating guy, lost as can be. But still created in the image and likeness of God. His brain held so much information, I don't see how one man can do that. He was like a walking scholar of German culture and taught us history all the way through the thing. I had this woman, I was sitting in the Sky Club, and I just sat down. It was the little club chairs, right, a little table. I had my little food, and I was getting ready to eat, and she sits down next to me, an older black lady, and she starts talking, and she says, "What do you do?" And I said, "Well, I work at a stone company, and I pastor a church." And she goes, "I knew God set me down here," right? Listen, created in the image and likeness of God, and you don't think He has some opportunity for us to sit down and she showed me picture after picture of these fireplaces that she wanted to know if I could help her with this one mantel shelf she didn't know what to do with, and so we sat down and we started dialoguing and we exchanged numbers and we started talking about life together and who we knew and what was going on, and there was this kinship. Why? Because we're made in the image and likeness of God. It was a great relationship. So then I go sit down on the plane, and there's this really vivacious, kind of perky lady, and we chat briefly, and I go sit down, and I'm sitting on the very front row, and she comes and sits right next to me. And we begin to talk. And I was sitting there talking to her, and I thought, this lady's a rock star. Because every third person would come in, they'd wave at her and speak to her, and I'm like, who are you? She's like, I teach, I'm a dentist, I teach in Coleman, and I do this oral thing. And anyway, she began to talk. She asked me what I did, and I told her, I said, I work at a stone company and I pastor a church. And so I just began to talk. She said, well, tell me about your church. And so I began to talk to her about it. She said, well, I'm Jewish. Great. Let me talk. You know what we've been looking at the past few months? We looked at Joshua. We looked at Judges. We looked at Ruth. We looked at Mephibosheth. And she's shaking her head. And I said, man, we love the God that you worship. And I said, now, I also believe in the New Testament, Jesus, and I realize you don't, but she said, well, we study the New Testament. I'm like, okay. She's a strict Jew. And we began to talk. And then she said, so I got a son, he's 13. What if he doesn't believe in the scriptures? What are you going to tell him? Now, I'm having a conversation with a Jewish lady who's now looking at me, and so and I'm teaching her about how the scriptures were collected. And she said, yeah, but how do you know that was what happened? And I said, well, I would start off by talking about creation and conscience. She's shaking her head. We're agreeing. She said, when you get a church, I want to, like a building, I want to come. And so I want you to consider me your pastor when you want answers from from a Christian perspective. So we traded numbers. And she sent me this little deal that her son wrote about her family. And I'm realizing I'm talking to a woman who is in love with the same God that I am, doesn't understand that Jesus is the way, the truth, and the life, but she's made in his image and likeness. And we shared in common so much. We just have to be people who are willing to disrupt those to bring about a greater good. I've kept you too long today. I just wanted you to hear this. Listen, we're going somewhere, and I want you to be on the train with us because it's moving, it's leaving the station, and this is where we're going, right? You got to get on board here. So we're talking about you exist. I want you to see yourself differently. You are loved by the Creator, whether you love him back or not. And you have value because he created you in his image and likeness. And he created a birthday for you, and he created a death day for you. And before that death day comes, we have to disrupt that journey so that they end up at the same place that we do, because all God wants is for us to belong. Why has God not come back yet for us? Is he old and slow? No, he's just patient. Not willing that any should perish, but that all may come to him, right? And so let's get after it while we can. That's the message that I kept you too long to share. Man, I want you to hear this song we're going to sing right now, and then we'll just enjoy time of communion and enjoy the day.